Up next, we have our interview with Tom Sniegoski and his writing partner, Jeannine Acheson. Tom is going to be writing the Herculoids in the next few months for IDW. And Jeannine has written, co-written with him, some novels and the Vampirella series and a few other things. And she has a lot of interesting things to say about going into writing, and he has a lot of interesting things to say about the characters and writing in general.
So if you want to learn about how to write a comic book, this is definitely the interview for you. Or if you want to learn about the Herculoids or Vampirella, this is a good one.
Yep.
Here we go.
Stop.
Further up.
Yeah. Go ahead. Okay, so we're here with Jeannine Acheson and Tom Sniegoski. I keep putting an R in your name.
People usually put a W in there.
That's yeah. So let me try one more time. Okay,
That is fine.
So again, we're here with Jeannine Acheson and Tom Sniegoski.
There you go.
There we go.
Nicely done.
See, as somebody who's had people mispronounce their name their whole lives, I know what that's like.
I just laugh.
Brian? They mispronounce your name, Brian?
Constantly, yeah. People say it backwards. I don't know why.
All right.
No, but so yeah, we're here to talk about comic writing, and you both have two different things coming out. Normally, you work together, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Or you have spent time working together.
Yep.
And Jeannine, you have Soul Taker out right now.
Yes, with Tom.
That's together.
With Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also have what's coming out on your own now? You have
Nothing on my own. I have like a couple of short stories in the ether, but that's it.
Oh, nice.
Good stuff.
She's like the newbie to the comic writing field,
right. Mm-hmm.
Whereas I'm the old dusty guy that's been around forever. That people say, "Oh, is he still alive?"
You've done a lot of things over the years. You are very well known for Vampirella, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and I'm still doing Vampirella.
Right. Yeah. And one of the main reasons we reached out was because you have Tom. You have the Herculoids book coming out
with Craig Russo. Yeah.
Right. We were just talking about how much we like the Herculoids, and yet doesn't really make sense until you research the history of the show why people our age even know the Herculoids.
Right. It's not. It wasn't really on that long, so it's not. It wasn't a lasting cartoon, but it's still.
There's something. I honestly think there's something about the look of the characters that kind of just embeds itself in your brain.
Right.
So how did you get involved in Herculoids? And have you been a fan since?
The show premiered in 1967, and I was 5.
Yeah.
And I can distinctly remember like watching it on Saturdays. But it was one of those things where I always was wondering what was going on with it. Yeah. When they weren't, I guess it came back in the 80s for a little
1981.
while.
81, there were 11 episodes, yeah.
And I wasn't aware of that, but I was always wondering who had the license. Because when I was starting my comics career, it was like one of those things where I was like, oh man, I would love to write those. I'd love to write those characters. And I guess DC had them forever.
They did.
Right. And really didn't do a hell of a lot with them. Like, I think the last thing that DC did was that big, what was it, Future Quest?
Yes. Yeah.
With Johnny Quest and all the other characters. And when Nick Barrucci over at Dynamite started to get the Warner Brothers licensing for the animated shows like Space Ghost and stuff like that, I remember specifically saying, I've known Nicky for years, and I said, if you do not give me the Herculoids, if you get it, I will be so bullshit at you that you can't even imagine how mad I'm going to be at you. And honestly, I never expected anything. And then I got this email out of the blue that said, we just got the Herculoids. If you want it, it's yours.
Mm-hmm.
So you really sorted out. It's really, you're the driving force behind the Herculoids right now.
Well,
right?
I think I think Nicky always intended to probably do it, but I think I kind of drew his attention to it.
Yeah.
Especially after Space Ghost, because Space Ghost did very well for them.
Yeah, Space Ghost was a good
all
series.
At the same time, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's a good series.
So how many issues are we looking at for Herculoids right now?
I plotted out a year, so I got 12. I plotted out 12 issues, and I hope they give me 12 more after.
Because we're seeing some of the issue number 1, some of your variant covers are already circling the internet, which they look absolutely fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
We actually recently did, Brian just recently did a video on Herculoids just because we've been exploring some of the cartoons from our childhood, and Herculoids happens to be one of them, along with Thundar the Barbarian and some other ones that we like as kids. And when we saw this coming out, that's why we reached out. I was like, we really want to talk to the guy behind Herculoids and how, if there's other fans besides us out there.
You'd be amazed. You'd be amazed at how many people have threatened me. Like I get emails from like other comics pros saying, "You screw this up, I'll be so mad at you," because everybody wanted it. It's almost like everybody wanted to do it.
The pressure, huh?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. I thought, like I need that.
Well, and it's such a weird property because, like you said, it came out in the '60s, and that generation watched it. Like you watched it, and then it came out again in the '80s when we watched it. So it's 2 generations.
Yeah.
That are coming together to support this, hopefully. And if you're listening, you're a fan. Put in your comic shops, get Herculoids, make them order.
You got the guy. I need new golf clubs.
Yeah. Now, who's Dynamite's doing it, right?
Dynamite's doing it. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, you guys also worked on, both of you together worked on Vampirella.
Yes.
Another legacy character.
Oh, yeah.
Was there the same kind of pressure working with Vampirella, whether there was working with something like Herculoids or Buffy or any of these other legacy?
I worked on Buffy too.
Yeah, I know.
Is there anything you haven't worked on?
We will look into things, and I don't think there really is.
I don't really think there is either. I think for me there was pressure just because I am new to this whole game, and Vampirella is such an iconic character and has so many fans across so many generations that and I'm still nervous when we have a new book out. So, yeah. So,
Jeannine, you one of the things that interested us with you was that we are both school teachers in our real lives. Outside of YouTube, we're both
outside of this frame.
We're both teachers. So you're a teacher for a long time too, right?
Middle school English, for
Brian teaches.
Years. Yeah. God bless you. Isn't it the best?
Oh yeah. It can be.
Yeah.
Depends on the year.
Yeah.
This year, not so much for him. I actually
watch this.
Oh, sorry. This year he's having a great time. We have some. I teach 4th and 5th grade special ed. So I'm the 12 to 1 teacher. Brian teaches gen ed, ELA. So
they're hard. I feel like lower grades are really hard, and higher grades, like middle school's perfect.
I wouldn't go there.
I like the sudden silence. There for a moment.
If you say so.
It was fun, but I was done.
So how did you go from teaching to becoming a comic book writer?
Oh boy, here we go.
I have no idea how it happened. No, actually, it was 5 years ago, little over 5 years ago. I was still teaching. And my colleagues and I were doing a new unit on what's better, a book or a movie. And it was part of project-based learning. And so I was like, we decided we needed to have an author who had books made into movies come and talk to our kids, 300 of them. And so after a morning filled with eating donuts and sugar and coffee, and I said to my colleagues, I said, I went to high school with a guy who is an author, and he's local, and he's had a bunch of his, 3 of his books made into movies. Let me email him and see if he'll come and talk to our kids. And Tom and I had not spoken for about 36 years or 38 years or so. And so I emailed him out of the blue and was like, hey, remember me? We went to high school together. Would you be willing to come and talk to my students? I told him about the unit. And he was like, sure, why not? So he came, and actually it was 5 years ago, the Monday before Thanksgiving. So it was literally just 5 years ago. And he came and he talked to my kids, and the unit was a success. And then Tom and I started talking again. We hadn't talked since high school, and we didn't stop talking. And then the pandemic hit. And Tom and my husband at the same time said, you should be writing. I had been looking to retire. I had been thinking about it, but I didn't want to retire until I had something else to do, and this was it.
Mm-hmm.
So we started writing together. We wrote a novel together during the pandemic over Skype. Mm-hmm. And the fall, I think a year and a half later, I went back to school that next year. And then I retired 3 years ago, and that was it. And we started writing together, and I haven't looked back.
Wow. That's a fantastic story. So have you always been a comic book fan?
Yes and no. Like in high school, like when Tom and I were hanging out together, I was a pretty big fan. He would bring me stuff that he thought I would be interested in. Mm-hmm. And I always had an interest in like the macabre and like all the short stories that I did with my students and things like that. And comics, yes and no. But when we started hanging out together, again, he started giving me comics. It's like, oh, I think you'd like this. I think you'd like that. Mm-hmm. And then once we started writing together, he was like, hey, I have to write a Valentine's Day special for Vampirella. Do you want to do it with me? And at that point, I was like, you know what? Why not? Sure, let's do this. And that's how it all started.
Now, did either one of you go back and read the old Warren stories, like for that Forrest Ackerman?
Well, I did way back, because I was doing Vampirella in the 90s for Harris.
Right, yeah.
The Harris comics. So that kind of, I had to read a lot of that stuff to kind of familiarize myself with the characters and stuff. She read some of the...
I did. I flipped through a few of them,
Yeah.
They were interesting.
I have...
not like what we wrote.
Yeah, I have a lot of a special place in my heart for those old Warren magazines. I used to read them when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like one of those like guilty pleasures where you read them and you, as a kid, you feel like I shouldn't really be reading these, you know, because they push the envelope a little more than like Marvel or DC, you know.
Yeah.
So that they were fun to read, like eerie and creepy and Vampirella.
I love the eerie stuff.
Great.
Because they had reoccurring characters.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Dark Horse is doing a really good series of reprints of those. If you ever watch them out again, they're nice. They're pretty nice versions. So that Vampirella, there's so many people who have worked on that character. Like, how do you avoid, like, as a writer, how do you avoid like doing something that people might have done already? Like, because I mean, you have such varied writers from like Kurt Busiek wrote Vampirella stories, Alan Moore wrote a Vampirella story. There's so many people who worked on the character. How do you, like, when you have a character like that, how do you come up with something that you feel is new? Well,
I mean, I think the main thing is that everybody's going to approach the subject matter differently. Mm-hmm. So even if somebody presented to you, all right, you're going to do stuff about vampires at the Vatican.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to approach that differently.
Right.
The theme might be vampires at the Vatican, but everybody's going to do the story differently or do a slightly different kind of story that uses that theme.
Right.
So, I mean, that's how I look at it. And since I'm so rooted in the character, I've probably written more Vampirella than anybody.
Yeah. Okay.
Since I was writing it in the 90s and now I'm back doing it again. Mm-hmm. That's how they got me to come back. They said that I can pick up where I left off in the 90s.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, that's great.
For her, it was her 50th anniversary, right?
Yeah.
It was. It just passed.
25th.
No, I think it was 25 for me.
For you. Yeah.
It was 50 for her 50, and they said to me
2019. Yeah.
They said to me that I could come back and pick up where I left off 25 years ago. So I was kind of like, oh, all right, the Sniegoski verse.
So you can do whatever you want, basically. When you
pretty much left me alone.
Right. No one's telling you what to do. You're doing what you want with the character.
Yeah, completely.
That's great.
But what's interesting is that everybody else is doing their own thing too. So what Jeannine and I did with a book called Vampiverse is basically create a Vampirella universe where there can be all these different Vampirellas doing different things.
Oh, nice.
So there's a Vampirella multiverse then. That one.
Yeah, there is. And Vampiverse is it. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's excellent. Now you did. You also worked on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I did
for a while. Well, you worked on correct me if I'm wrong, in the novels, right? Novelization.
I worked on the novels and I wrote the Angel comic.
The Angel comic, yes. Okay.
With Chris, yeah. And there were a couple of crossovers with Buffy on that. But yeah, I wrote the video games. Chris and I wrote the video games too, the two Buffy games.
Right. Now that's remind me, Chris
Chris Golden.
Thank you, Chris Golden. Right.
Yeah.
when you do shared universe fiction, how much sort of editorial control do you deal with? Like, do they interfere a lot? Do they give you an outline and say, oh, this is kind of what we want to happen?
It all depends. Like something like Buffy, they were very hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of some other stuff. Buffy was very hands-on. Like I've never done Star Wars, but I've heard Star Wars is really, really. They're very particular.
Yeah.
Herculoids, I was surprised. Everything had to get run by somebody.
Yeah.
They basically just came back and said, "Don't kill so many people, and we'll be good." So that was good. That was good. I was like, oh, all right, that's the only thing. Just don't kill as many people. All right, I won't. I'll tone down the carnage a little bit.
You're like, I'm getting rid of that Gleep and Gloop right at the start.
Oh, I love them.
Wipe them out.
I have them killing people, so they kind of wanted me to get rid of that a little bit.
So it's going to be a different version of Herculoids than we're used to, is what you're saying.
It's a little rougher.
Okay.
Yeah,
a little rougher. It's got a little bit of it's got a little bit more of an edge, but at the same time, I really wanted it to feel like the cartoons too.
We're a little bit older now, so we could probably take a little bit.
I think you can take it.
Yeah. I think we'll be okay if we're.
My daughter's become a huge Buffy fan. She's 22, and she's just been introduced to it, so she's really loving it. And it's funny. I was
great show. Really
texting her last night. I was like, "Oh, we have tomorrow an interview with the guy who writes all the Buffy books," and she was like, "Oh, Dad, that's fantastic. You gotta ask him, about if there's any chance of it coming back." That's what she wants to know.
Oh,
as far, what I know,
from your books.
Yeah, I know. Boom had the license,
right?
And they just lost the license again. So I don't know who's gonna do more comics.
And here's my follow-up question for you. So you have Buffy, and you have Vampirella.
Yeah.
Is there any chance
of a crossover
that you're ever going to get a crossover?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if they would agree to it. That's the two. Like, I'm sure Dynamite would be all over.
Yeah.
But I don't know because that's Disney now because they own Fox.
Oh, so they
own Buffy.
They own Buffy.
They own Buffy now. So I don't know if they're. I know for a fact that they're a little odd with what they allow to be done and stuff. Right. They're kind of possessive of it, but at the same time, really not doing anything with stuff. So It's weird. Like, why be possessive of something that you're not doing anything with? That kind of. So, yeah, there was a couple of things that came down because Chris Golden just wrote a what was that called? Slayers, Jeannine?
Yeah, it was an audio drama, right?
It was an audio drama with some of the original cast.
Okay.
That did really well. It was on Audible, Amazon's Audible, and there was something that went down with that it was really popular, but they said that they don't want to do anymore. Which is kind of like, well, why would you not want to do more? It was really popular and well received. Why wouldn't you want to do more?
Yeah,
I don't know.
But it's a really popular property still, even today, and there's really nothing being put out there. I mean, it's a perfect comic book. Buffy is a perfect comic book character.
Right.
And we have nothing.
Right. Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I mean, I think there was a new novel. Somebody did a novel about a year ago. A new novel that came out of Simon & Schuster, I think. But nothing. I think that was supposed to lead into more things too, and that didn't do anything either. So I don't know.
So there's something weird there.
Yeah, there's something. Yeah, there's something that there's probably a piece of the equation that we don't know.
Something that they maybe have planned that they are keeping tight-lipped.
Yeah, and then, it could be one of those things where we have plans. Well, what are they? We don't know.
Yeah.
that type of thing.
So now that we're going into that, you wrote Fallen, and that was optioned on ABC Family, correct?
ABC Family Channel did 3 movies. Yeah.
So how did we? It's funny because a lot of times when we talk to creators, we get into the options discussion and how you get things optioned and they never go nowhere.
Yeah,
And who was Brian Buccellato was telling us he's got a couple of things that were optioned like 3 times, and he gets paid every time it gets optioned, and he's okay with that. So you had something that actually got to produced and on TV. So how did that go for you? How did you like that experience?
That was a crazy experience. That I think probably the most frustrating thing about it is that you don't really have much of a say. I mean, you would love to be able to say to them, "Hey, you know what you really should be doing,"
Yeah.
and they don't want to hear it.
Right. Yeah.
Like I was going to I was supposed to show up on the set of when they were filming the thing, and the director said, "I don't want him here."
Oh.
And my agent, who was also a producer on the movie, said, "Well, why don't you want Tom here? What's the matter? He's going to tell me what to do, and I don't want to listen to him." And he goes, "You don't know Tom. Tom's not going to tell you how to do anything. Just shut up." Yeah, he thought I was going to come in and tell him how to do things.
Yeah.
So did you get to go on? You got to go on?
Yeah. That was pretty cool.
And you told him what to do, right? As soon as
I did. Well, of course I did.
No. Jump in front of the camera. Stop.
No, stop. What's his motivation?
Do you have anything else that's in that process? Possibly options?
Yeah, I've got to buy. Oh God, I have one. The project that will never die. There's a project that Chris Golden and I did called Talent. Mm-hmm. And we did it as a comic for Boom, like it was one of Boom's very first comics.
Right.
And that thing has been optioned for the last 13 years. It just keeps finding a new home.
And you get paid every time it gets optioned.
Every time it gets optioned, they get paid. Yeah.
Because we actually recently had
it's like a secret industry.
It's
that writers
that we don't like. If we were never talked to creators, we would never notice that. You think something gets optioned, it doesn't come out, and everybody on this side thinks, "Oh, it's so sad it didn't come out." But on your side, like, I got paid. It's
oh well.
Right. I mean, you'd like to see it.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, they do the option. They have it for between like 12 and 18 months, and if that runs out, either they option it again or they give it back to you and you try to sell it again. So.
Right.
Because we recently had Ross Ritchie on recently, and he was talking to us about options and how, with all the Boom stuff that he worked on over the years and how
he worked on Talent with us.
Yeah. That's is there a certain amount of anxiety, like you spend some time with these characters and then if it gets optioned for other media, is there a certain amount of anxiety that goes with that? Like, do you feel like, they're
gonna ruin it?
Oof,
I think
they ruin it?
I think it would be stupid to say that there isn't, but I think at the same time, when you've been at this a while, you start to realize that, look, I'm just gonna step back and do what I can.
Yeah.
The book is always going to be there. The comic is always going to be there. That's what I did.
Yeah.
What they end up doing with it, I have no control.
It's out of your hands. So
unless it says something in my contract, or I can go over there and futz with their scripts or something.
Yeah.
It's really kind of stupid to worry about it because there's really nothing you can do.
There's nothing you do after that point.
Yeah. Once you cash that check, they don't want to talk to you anymore.
Because I'm one of those obnoxious people who's always telling people the book was better, and I actually feel like emotionally hurt when something I love gets turned into a terrible movie. Like they take something that's really great book and they make like a meh movie out of it. Yeah, I'm always like, oh, this means people aren't going to read the book, because I want people to read the book. But there's a few things I can think of right off the top of my head that are just so frustrating that way.
I'd say there's probably more that didn't work than worked.
Right. Oh, probably. Yeah. Like I don't know if you guys have ever read the Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay.
Oh yeah, Paul lives down the street. Yeah.
I knew he was a Massachusetts guy and also a former teacher, if I'm not wrong. He was a math teacher.
He's still a math teacher.
Oh, he still teaches math. Okay, I wasn't sure if he was still doing it.
Yeah,
but they turned that book into Knock at the Cabin, and I was like, come on. Like, the book was so amazing. Like, it couldn't work as a movie, and I don't know, but
it tried.
Enough of me complaining.
It tried. There's way worse than that out there.
Oh my God, yeah, sure. Yeah,
way worse.
It tried hard.
Yeah.
So tell us about Soul Taker. You worked on it together.
Yep.
This is Jeannine.
Jeannine came up with the concept for this, so we'll let her.
Yeah.
It was interesting. It was early when Tom and I had started writing together. And one day he had gone to visit his mother, his elderly mother, who is now 97.
97.
That's great.
She's about 95 or so.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, how's your mom?" And he said, "Oh, she's still old." And I said, "Oh, well, wouldn't it be funny if when you got there, she was like, 10 years younger, and every time you went to see her, she got younger and younger and younger?" And he was like, "Oh, that would be really funny." And I said, "Oh, that would be a great story." I said, "But it's already been done." It's like Benjamin Button. And he was like, "But it's not done by you."
Right.
So we started thinking about it. We started talking about it, and it kind of grew. Every time we turned around, we'd have another idea about it. So it ended up being a pitch for Mad Cave Studios that we did, and it became Soul Taker, and it's about this millennia-old woman who she's not really a vampire, but she kind of feeds off the energy of other people. She's like an energy vampire.
Yeah, vampire adjacent.
She feeds off people, and she hides out in old age homes and kind of takes what she needs from people.
Oh.
And then a couple of her enemies from her far past and her not so far past find out where she is, and hilarity ensues.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a nice story, and actually, I think we just proofed the last issue, so it'll be out in January, I think.
So
January.
Awesome.
Yeah, I
make sure
think
you look for that too.
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
From Mad Cave, Soul Taker.
Mad Cave Studios.
Mad Cave. We actually, it's funny. Right after we get off of you, we have an interview with Magma Comics, the guys at Magma.
Oh, okay.
That's our neck. That's why we have a drop dead point in it, because we've been trying to get them on for a while.
Okay.
Yeah. So process. I want to ask about
Process.
Okay.
All right.
Now, I've tried to collaborate on writing projects with people in my distant past, when I was a different person years ago, but I've always had trouble collaborating. I don't know why. How do you make these collaborations work? Because you guys have worked together on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how does it?
And it's interesting because you said there was a big gap between the time you spoke to each other.
Yeah.
And then you start speaking again, and now you're working together, which seems to be working out very well for both of you.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Definitely working for me.
Yeah. So how do you keep it from like one person kind of dominating the entire thing, or?
It's funny because when we first started writing together, Tom encouraged me to write. He kept on saying to me, I'd write things and he'd give me feedback, and they were my own things. But then we started talking about writing a novel together. And I always said, well, I kind of figure I'll defer to you because you've got the experience. I mean, I'm an English teacher and I know my way around a book, but I had never written a book before. And so I always said, well, I would defer to you because, you have the experience. Mm-hmm. I think that lasted all of, I don't know, a couple of months.
20 minutes, 25, like 25 minutes.
But as it turns out, I have opinions on things and characters and plotting and things like that. But I think we get along fine. We collaborate fine. We bounce ideas off each other fine. We draft things fine, but we don't. Editing is where we kind of butt heads a little bit.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I think
again that's a process. That is not unusual. I mean, even if you're working with an editor at a publishing house, you're going to clash with what they want versus what you want.
Right.
So, I mean, that's always going to be part of the process.
And you probably get interesting results from that clash.
Yeah, honestly, I think that like my solo writing is very different than my writing that I do with Jeannine. There's definitely a different vibe to the stuff that we do together. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I don't find anything unusual in regards to the fact that we clash sometimes on something. Right. I'm usually right, but
yeah.
So, Jeannine, do you have any advice for an ELA teacher who wants to write comic books at some point, but continues to deny himself that he doesn't want to write comic books? But
oh gosh, I don't know. Find your high school friend who does write comics. I don't know. I honestly fell into this ass backwards. Mm-hmm. But at this point in my life, I kind of figure I'm just along for the ride, and I say yes to everything. So if you think an opportunity is going to present itself, or you can kind of make an opportunity present itself, then do it. Like you've got an interview with comic people this afternoon. Pitch them.
Right.
Really? That's what you should do? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I heard that before.
You don't know what you're doing here.
You're doing exactly what I wanted you to. And that's what been my Brian's a writer, and he wants to write, and he's having trouble getting to that point. And we've interviewed so many creators in the comic industry, and like Ross Ritchie, and now we have Magnum Comics, that I'm like, we have the connections now.
Right.
Like I don't know if you watch any of the interviews, but we interviewed Mike Allred, and Mike, well, I don't know, Tom, I don't know if you know Mike.
Yeah, I know Mike.
Mike, I literally will email him something now, like I have a question about something, and he'll be within 20 minutes, he'll like a paragraph
he's unnecessarily nice to us.
And I like just,
But you totally have to take advantage of that. You really do.
Yeah.
If you do have questions about like comic writing, I'm happy to answer them too.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I mean, it's not one of the. I mean, it's one of those things where I'm doing it anyway. So it's kind of like someone asks me a question. It kind of challenges. Me to kind of like working with Jeannine has kind of like almost like reawakened a lot of stuff that I don't want to say forgot.
Yeah,
but it is kind of forgot. It's kind of like almost like you're on automatic pilot.
Yeah,
I've been writing comics since the '90s.
Yeah. So. I've read, I think, I'm trying to remember who it was who said this in an interview, but they said that it's very easy for writers after you're doing it for a few years to kind of forget the basics. Like you get involved in sort of things like doing something different here or doing something different here, and you kind of forget like things like Freitag's Pyramid or like, like basic plot structure just goes out.
You forget that stuff, but you also kind of lose the excitement.
Yeah.
Because it becomes almost like autopilot, and you just this is what I do, so I'm cranking it out. When she came back on the scene, it kind of made me aware of the excitement, excitement level. It's kind of like, you know what? I'm writing comics. This is really freaking cool.
Yeah.
And it was just a nice reawakening. Because I had to I was teaching her how to do stuff, so kind of remember the days when I was first doing it for the first time.
Right.
So I owe her as much as she owes me.
No, that's awesome.
I owe you.
Oh, there you go.
You owe me.
You definitely just lost some power in the editing process next time around. You know that, right?
I am correct.
So we've got also, Tom, you also wrote a prequel to Bone.
I wrote multiple prequels to Bone.
Yes. Okay.
I wrote three Bone novels that spin out of actually the original Bone series.
Yeah.
And then I wrote 2 prequel books that kind of like eventually lead into Bone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a little special place in my heart for Bone as well, because I read Bone as an adult, obviously. But it was in my classroom library.
Okay.
I was like, oh, graphic novel. How'd this, find its way here? It was like sent in from Scholastic or somebody. And I started reading it, and I was absolutely blown away by how amazing it was. And then I did some research on where it came from and how it started. How did you get involved with working with Jeff Smith?
I met Jeff a number of times at various conventions, and we just really kind of got to be friends. And I hadn't read a word of Bone at that point. I was kind of like, it's really kind of rude to be palling around with this guy and be really good friends with him and not know what he's all about.
Right.
So I read Bone, and I absolutely, like you, fell in love with it. Oh my God, it's amazing. So I knew what he did. And then I don't even know how many years later on, I got a call out of the blue from his wife that said, "Do you want to write the prequel to Bone?"
That's great.
And it was kind of like, oh, all right. Okay, I guess, yeah.
It sounds like people really like you.
And what?
I don't know why. I try my damnedest to be as nasty as I can be.
That's what's interesting about the Bone thing is that it's such a different universe than other universes that you're working in.
Well, yeah, I mean, it kind of
charming.
And when I step back and I'm kind of like, what do? I do everything. I mean, it's kind of like it's humor, there's horror, I would consider myself more of a horror writer than anything. Mm-hmm. And then I look at Bone, and then I look at a bunch of the other like kid stuff that I've done, and it's kind of like, I don't know what I am.
Well, horror is a good place to start. Horror is a difficult. I don't know why I'm throwing my opinions around on interviews, you guys. This is so stupid. But but horror is such a conservative genre, right? Like, you can't step too far out of the lines either way, or it stops being horror, right? Yeah. You put in too many jokes, it's not horror. You know, you have too much fantasy here, it's not horror anymore, right?
Right. So, but at least the genres kind of do blend in a way.
Yeah.
At least I find that I do that a lot. I kind of like there's a slightly humorous bent to some of the horror stuff that I've written, but it's almost like Ghostbusters humor.
Right.
It serves the story. It's a horror story that happens to have humor in it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know. So.
Yeah, and I think working within like such tight constraints can make you a better writer.
You got to be careful because you don't want, if you're going for something and you go too far on either side, you're not achieving your goal.
Right. Yeah. And Jeannine, you said you're working on short stories right now, right? That's a tough. I always think of that as a tough medium.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
She does too much. Yeah.
I think probably because the first major thing that I wrote with Tom was a novel, and it's like 500 pages.
Yeah.
Too big. But I have a short story now that I think is like 20-something pages. I'm like, this is way too much.
And you're not even close to being done.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
no.
So
No.
You'll be the David Foster Wallace of short stories. Like, here's my 250-page short story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
and as a bonus, there's no paragraph break.
No, not a one. Just complete one paragraph.
Right.
Of consciousness.
Yeah, it's like that tight form is it's so difficult to stick to,
Yeah.
And do you have a preference as what you'd like to work in? Like, do you prefer novels over comics? Do you prefer comics over short stories? Is there?
That's a
just be careful here.
I think I think I like either one as I'm working on it. I like comics for the economy of the storytelling and like being very precise with the language and the dialogue and things like that and describing things. And I'm kind of Tom and I are working on a graphic novel right now.
Mm-hmm.
And since he's been working on the Herculoids, I've been doing a lot of the laying out of that myself.
Yeah.
And that's been good for me. I kind of get to stretch my wings a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it's challenging, but fun. And so I love it. And it's great. But then when I pick up my short story, when I'm, have 20 minutes or 4 hours, I like that too. So I kind of go like, I'm kind of a fair weather writer, I guess. I like whatever I'm working on the best when I'm working on it.
Oh, that's a great answer.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
And as far as scripts, Thomas, do you write full script? I'm assuming, right?
I write full script. Yeah.
And do you do a lot of description, a lot of visual description, or do you?
Depending on the artist. That's all depending on the artist. If it's somebody that I've worked with before and I know what they do, they don't need me to describe stuff to them. They get it. They can. They'll just kind of improvise from what the basic stuff that I give them. A lot of new guys, like if I've never worked with the person before, I'm a little more hand holding.
Okay.
Until they tell me they don't want that. Because every once in a while you'll get an artist that says, "You don't have to do that. I'm going to do that."
Right. Okay.
It all depends on the artist that you're working with.
And now, when we talk to creators, we usually ask questions about how you got into it all, right? Like, if we're focusing on comics.
Yeah. Thomas,
you remember what comic it was that you read that you were like, I want to do this. This is something I'd like to do.
Yeah, actually, I do. I remember. What's so funny is I read comics forever.
Yeah.
But it didn't dawn on me that I could do this.
Yeah.
Until I read Saga of the Swamp Thing number 21, which I think was the first Alan Moore or the second Alan Moore Swamp Thing story, The Anatomy Lesson.
That is a great comic.
I had never read a comic multiple times in a row before. But that one I sat and I read it again, and it was almost like light dawns on Marblehead. It was kind of like, wait a minute, this is so amazing.
Yep.
I've been dabbling with short stories and stuff too. It was kind of like, wait a minute, I love comics. I could do this. And that was the one that the connection was made that I could do that.
Mine is in that same series. The one that I don't work in comics.
But is that what you're saying? You're going to start working in comics? Oh.
The one that I realized, like, oh, people do this. This is people doing this, and I wasn't just thinking of the characters of the story.
Right.
Was a few issues after that was the Nuke Face papers.
Oh. Yeah,
I don't know if you remember that story.
Yeah, I'm good friends with Steve Bissett, so
really?
I was actually like seeing a lot of this stuff as he was doing it.
Oh, he did great, beautiful work. Oh my god!
He published my first comic book story in a collection called Taboo.
Oh, nice!
The very first issue of Taboo.
Ooh, I've heard of that.
Very first issue of Taboo has my very first comic story in it.
Really?
Yeah.
You made that come around.
Nice.
Nicely done.
Yeah, well done, right? It's almost like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. When you're criticizing.
Ginny, do you have a comic that you looked at and you were like, oh, people do this, or I could do this, or
Sandman.
Another great one. Wow.
Yeah, very early on.
But that was me shoving
that
it.
That was him.
Going.
However you find it.
well, again, people's idea, people who are not comic readers are not familiar with how amazing in the kinds of storytelling you can do anything in a comic.
Yeah.
Any kind of storytelling in any kind of visual way. And I think people don't realize that.
Yeah.
And that was a prime example with her, especially with her. I think she was kind of stuck in a superhero groove. Well, that's what comics are. Right. And when I shoved the Sandman in front of her, Sandman is like literary.
Oh,
I mean, it's amazing. That was the perfect thing to kind of rejigger her way of thinking with comics.
Was that the first story arc? With the was it called Herculoids and Nocturnes?
Yeah.
And that's the one, huh?
Yeah, the one that with Constantine was looking for his bag of sand, and all that stuff. Yeah.
All the stuff you read, I don't know.
It's a lot of the stuff I read. Yeah. Actually, it's funny. Sandman for me was the first time I was ever jealous of somebody who was creative. Where I read it and I was like, oh, this Neil Gaiman guy, God damn it!
Oh, that's we do that. We do that daily. We're like,
how does he do it?
Serious writer like Joe Lansdale. I want to punch Joe Lansdale.
Yeah, I remember being like that about Clive Barker too. Like reading some of Clive Barker's short stories and being like, oh man, this guy.
I know it's like frustrating because it's almost like like they're throwing down the glove. They're challenging you
exactly,
and you don't think you're even going to be able to come close to it.
Never.
But you have to try, though, right?
I'm not going to even try.
Right. Well, that's what I said. I said you got to get past that and say, all right, maybe I won't be Clive Barker, but I'll be me.
Yeah,
you could be you.
Or I will come for Clive Barker. Well, he's sick now. I can't do that. That's not nice.
What do you guys?
Alan Moore. I'll come for Alan Moore. Alan Moore, I'm coming for you.
Have you guys been doing any conventions? Do you have any appearances coming up that you?
I don't know. We got anything coming? Do we have anything coming up?
Not until next year. Not until next spring. But we're signed up to go to San Diego Comic-Con again next year. It's our third year together.
Very nice.
Oh, nice.
Wild.
We've never been.
That's insane.
We do New York every year. We've never been to San Diego.
She didn't get into New York last year. They didn't accept a professional.
Really?
Yeah, really? Which is really bizarre.
Last year we went.
Yeah,
but no, didn't get in. Maybe next year.
Well, that seems odd. You have published work.
Yeah,
published author. I mean, I got in, but she didn't get in, so I went solidarity, I was like, I ain't
You're
going.
going. All right. So we go every year. So if you're there, we will see you there.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Any other plans besides San Diego? That's a big one.
We have a bunch of local shows that we usually do. We do Fan Expo Boston. We do Wicked Con. We do like local library shows up here in the North Shore, and we were discussing Dragon Con, but we're not sure about that.
I think we've missed the.
Where's Dragon Con?
That's Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we missed the cutoff on that.
No,
I just found out about it. Don't look at me.
Yeah, Wicked. You said Wicked Con.
Wicked Con. Yeah, that's another little Boston show.
Yeah. We do a lot.
None of that New York, Boston.
No,
convention.
I'm talking about conventions. We go to a lot of conventions in our area. So a lot of New Jersey conventions,
New York,
Pennsylvania stuff around.
Yeah.
I actually end up usually going to at least one a week at this point.
Yeah, you really are.
Really?
I'm gonna. I would like to. I haven't been to Boston in a few years. Maybe we should show you one of those. Yeah, okay. I like Boston.
Fun.
But you don't. I do conventions once a week. Brian does once a month or so. So
yeah, I have a very busy week.
He's too busy writing. But really, thank you guys for taking the time to be with us. If at any point in time you ever want to come back on and
we've got projects that we can't even announce yet.
We love that because we've caught some creators where they tell us about it and then they'll hit us out and be like, you cannot put that on.
Right.
My publisher said don't, I'll get in trouble. So.
I actually checked about something prior to coming on and they were like, no, you can't talk about that yet.
And that's something funny because people don't realize that there are things that you're working on that you're not allowed to talk about.
No.
You can't say anything about. And if you did and we put it up, you would get in trouble.
Yeah, we got two major things. And actually, one of them was in a contract that said, you do not talk about this until we announce it. So,
nice.
Like Fight Club.
It's like,
right.
Fight Club.
So when those things are coming up and you can talk about it, we would love to have you on. This was a lot of fun for us.
Yeah, definitely.
This was good.
Cool. Very cool.
And so we want everyone looking for Soul Taker.
We
want everyone out there looking for your Vampirella stuff.
Vampirella stuff. Herculoids is in
the Herculoids.
Herculoids is in the current order book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be keeping our eye out for Jeannine's short stories.
Someday, maybe.
Nightmare Magazine or if they're horror.
And there's a graphic novel they're working on together we don't know about yet.
Right.
And there's another comic for Dark Horse that we haven't talked about yet.
Oh.
And then there's novellas.
Oh, right. We have, there's a publisher, Bad Hand Books, is publishing a new novella series by us.
Oh.
So listen, you're welcome anytime. Anytime you want to come on, just let us know.
Can we say the title of that novella?
Yeah, it's called Nira. 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 And that's the first of a series of stories that we'll be writing together.
There you go.
Oh, so
beginning of next year.
Yeah, be out there looking for those as well.
Yeah.
And if you're at San Diego, check them out at San Diego.
Check them out. Yeah. We're around.
Thank you so much
for your time.
Thank you. It was very fun.
Anytime. You're welcome anytime with us.
All right.
Yeah, let us know when you.
I'll be on every week.
That's good. We're good with that.
I'll be talking away.
That's fine. We love this. This is our favorite part of having our YouTube channel. It's just talking to creators that I know that we like and want to hear about. But thank you, and we will certainly talk to you again soon.
Good luck with Magma.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right. Take it
you
easy.
should do it, right? Thank you.
It was nice talking to you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.